Good evening. Tonight we begin our journey beside a quiet river, following a winding path through the countryside toward the orchard settlement of Vineswreath. There are no urgent matters waiting ahead, no dangers on the road, no deadlines to meet before sunset. Only a clear day, a gentle rolling path, and the promise of arriving somewhere warm and welcoming before nightfall. So settle comfortably wherever you are. Allow the day behind you to drift further away, and imagine. The morning settles over the river path like a held breath, soft and golden, and you are already walking. The hour is still early enough that the dew is not yet burned away from the grasses, and each blade along the verge glistens like 1,000 tiny mirrors catching the first true light of early summer. The sky above is a pale, washed blue, the kind of blue that seems to have been painted in watercolor left to dry in the sun, and here and there a few clouds drift with the unhurried confidence of creatures who know they have nowhere else to be. The wind is present but gentle, just enough to stir the leaves of the willows that line the river bank, and to carry the scent of damp earth and wild mint from somewhere further upstream. It is a wind that does not push, it does not hurry, but simply accompanies, as if it too has decided to walk this path with you today. The river itself is a companion of the oldest kind. It runs beside the path with a steady, murmuring voice, the kind of sound that seeps into the bones and loosens whatever tension the morning may have carried. The water is clear, shallow enough near the banks to see the smooth stones beneath, their colors shifting from slate gray to amber to a soft mossy green. Occasionally a fish rises, breaking the surface with a quiet plip that echoes briefly across the stillness before dissolving back into the river's endless conversation with itself. Dragonflies hang in the air like jewels suspended on invisible threads, their wings catching the light and scattering it into fleeting rainbows, and then they dart away, following some private purpose known only to themselves. You walk slowly, because there is no reason to walk any other way. The path is packed earth, soft underfoot from the recent rains, and it curves gently alongside the river as if it was never designed but simply grew there, a natural invitation to wander afield. Once more your eyes are drawn to the willows as they lean over the water, their long branches trailing like fingers testing the current, and the light that filters through their leaves is dappled in green, moving in slow patterns across the ground as the wind shifts. Birds call to one another in the branches above, their songs layered and complex, and when you pause to listen, you can almost hear the individual threads of a melody, the way one voice rises while another falls, the way the silence between notes is as important as the notes themselves. A thrush, perhaps, and somewhere further off a blackbird, and the distant cooing of wood pigeons. The path begins to widen after a while, and the willows give way to an open meadow that slopes gently down to the river's edge. Here the grass is taller, shot through with wildflowers in every shade of white and yellow and lavender, and the air is thick with the scent of clover and warm hay. Butterflies drift from flower to flower with the same unhurried pace that you have adopted, and bees move among the blossoms with a low, drowsy humming. The sun is higher now, just beginning to warm the back of your neck, and the wind, when it comes, carries the faintest hint of something sweet, something that might be fruit ripening somewhere beyond the hills. And you walk on. It is perhaps an hour later, though time has begun to feel less like a measured thing and more like a quality of the light, when you come upon the stone bridge. It arches across the river with the quiet dignity of something that has stood for centuries, its stones worn smooth by weather and water and the passage of countless feet before yours. Moss grows in the crevices, a soft velvety green that seems almost luminous in the midday light, and tiny ferns have found purchase in the cracks, their fronds waving gently in the breeze. The bridge is not large, it is not grand, but it possesses a kind of humble beauty that makes you stop walking and simply look. The water flows beneath the arch with a different voice here, a deeper note, as if the river is speaking more slowly as it passes through the bridge's shadow. The stones themselves are warm when you touch them, having absorbed the morning sun, and they feel solid and reassuring beneath your fingers, the kind of solidity that reminds you that some things endure. Lichen spreads across the surface in patterns of silver and pale orange, like maps of countries that exist only in dreams and fragments of dreams. And if you look closely, you can see where generations of travelers have worn the stone smooth at the center of the arch, a gentle depression shaped by the simple act of walking. You pause at the apex of the bridge and lean against the low parapet, looking down at the water below. The river is deeper here, the bottom no longer visible, and the surface reflects the sky with such perfect clarity that it seems you are looking into another world, one where the clouds drift upside down and the swallows that skim the water are flying through a mirror. The swallows themselves are a wonder, their movements so quick and precise that they seem to be stitching the air together, their forked tails tracing patterns that disappear as soon as they are made. You watch them for a long time, the minutes stretching out like the river, unhurried and full of light. This bridge has a story, you sense, though no one is left to tell it. Perhaps it was built by a farmer who wanted to bring his sheep across the river to the richer pastures on the other side. Perhaps it was built by lovers who wanted a place to meet at twilight. Perhaps it was simply built by someone who understood that a river is not a barrier but a gathering place, and that a bridge is not a crossing but an invitation to pause. Whatever its story, the bridge offers it to you freely, without words, and you accept it with the same quiet gratitude. Beyond the bridge, the path leaves the river behind, or perhaps it is the river that leaves the path, turning away to follow some deeper valley that you cannot see. The land begins to rise, gently at first, the slope so gradual that you barely notice the change except for the way your breath comes out a little more slowly, a little more deeply. The grass gives way to heather, a low carpet of purple and green that stretches across the hillside like a quilt, and the air begins to change. It is cooler here despite the climb, and the wind carries a different scent now, something sharper and cleaner, the smell of pine and distant stone. The sound of the river fades behind you, replaced by the rustle of the heather in the wind and the occasional cry of a hawk circling high overhead. The hawk is a dark shape against the blue, riding the thermals with a stillness that seems almost impossible, and you watch it for a moment before continuing upward. The path here is narrower, more winding, and it leads you through clusters of gorse bushes whose yellow flowers blaze like tiny suns against the green, their scent rich and sweet in the warm air. Bees work among the blossoms with the same steady patience that you have adopted, and their buzzing is a low, constant music that follows you as you climb. As you gain height, the world opens up behind you. You pause and turn, and there below is the valley you have been walking through all morning. The river a silver ribbon winding through the green, the bridge a small stone arc that seems impossibly distant now, and the willows a dark smudge along the water's edge. The perspective is different from here, the way it always is when you climb, and you feel a gentle sense of accomplishment. Not the sharp pride of conquest, but the softer satisfaction of having moved through a landscape and let it leave its mark on you. The rolling heather eventually gives way to a small wood, the first trees you have encountered since the willows by the river. These are oaks, ancient and broad, their branches spreading wide to form a canopy that filters the sunlight into shafts of gold that move slowly across the forest floor as the wind stirs the leaves above. The ground beneath the oaks is soft with fallen leaves, a deep carpet of brown and amber that crunches gently underfoot, and the air is cooler here, shaded and still, smelling of earth and fungi and the secret patient life of the forest. Ferns grow in the dappled light, much larger than their diminutive brethren that found purchase in the stone cracks of the bridge, their fronds unfurling in the same slow, deliberate way that everything seems to move in this place. And here and there a patch of bluebells adds a wash of color that seems almost too vivid to be real. The wood is not large, and you emerge from it after a time into a landscape that feels entirely different from anything you have walked through before. The hills have softened into gentle slopes, and the slopes are covered with orchards. Rows upon rows of apple trees stretch away on either side of the path, their branches heavy with the first small fruits of the season, still green but already promising the sweetness that will come later in the summer. The trees are in full leaf, and the light that filters through them is a soft, shifting green, different from the green of the willows, different from the green of the oaks, a green that seems to hold the memory of sun and rain and the slow, patient work of seasons. The scent of apples is everywhere, faint but unmistakable, and the wind moves through the orchard with a rustling sound that is like the pages of a book being turned very slowly. It is among the orchards that you meet the orchard keeper. She is an older woman, her hair the color of the silver lichen you saw on the bridge, and her hands are gnarled and strong from years of tending trees. She is sitting on a low wooden bench beneath one of the largest apple trees, a basket of early cherries at her feet, and she looks up at you as you approach with a smile that is as warm and unhurried as the afternoon itself. "Traveler," she says, and her voice is the kind of voice that seems to belong to the orchards, soft and weathered and full of the same patience that the trees possess. "You have chosen a fine day for walking. The apples are just beginning to set, and the bees are in a good mood. Sit with me a moment, if you have time." You sit beside her on the bench, and she offers you a handful of cherries from her basket. They are small and dark, still warm from the sun, and when you bite into one, the sweetness floods your mouth in a way that seems to summarize the entire season. The orchard keeper watches you eat with a quiet satisfaction, and then she gestures towards the trees around you. "These trees have been here for 3 generations," she says. "My grandmother planted the first of them, and my mother tended them, and now I tend them, and some day my daughter will tend them after me. The apples do not rush, you see. They take their time, and so must we. There is a lesson in that, I think, for anyone who walks through an orchard and is willing to listen." She tells you about the different varieties of apples, the early ones that will be ready in late summer, and the later ones that need the first frost to bring out their sweetness. And as she speaks, you find yourself sinking into the rhythm of her words, the same rhythm that the wind follows through the leaves, the same rhythm that the bees follow as they move from blossom to blossom. She tells you about the year the frost came too late, and the year the rains came too early. And through it all, there is a sense of acceptance, of a life lived in partnership with the land rather than in opposition to it. "You are heading to Vineswreath," she says. Not a question, as much as a statement of fact. I can tell by the look in your eyes. That is the look of someone who has been walking through the world and is ready to find a place to rest. You will like it there. The orchards run right up to the village edge, and the people are kind, and in the evenings the lanterns are lit along the paths, and it is the most beautiful thing you will ever see. Go on now. The sun is beginning to slant, and you will want to arrive before the light changes." She presses another handful of cherries into your palm and then returns to her weeding, and you continue on your way with the taste of fruit still on your tongue and the sound of her voice still echoing somewhere in the back of your mind. The orchards continue for some time, the path winding between the trees, and gradually the signs of the village begin to appear. First, it is the sound of a bell, distant and low, ringing from somewhere ahead. It is not an urgent sound, not a summons, but simply a marking of the hour, a gentle reminder that time is passing even as you walk through the timeless green of the orchard. Then it is the sight of smoke rising from a chimney, a thin gray column that rises straight up into the still air before dispersing into the blue. Then it is the first rooftop, glimpsed through a gap in the trees, its tiles worn to a soft terracotta by years of sun and rain. The path widens and becomes a proper road, packed gravel now instead of earth, and it is lined with low stone walls that are covered in climbing roses. The roses are in full bloom, their petals a deep pink that shades to white at the edges, and their scent is so rich and heady that it seems to hang in the air like a blessing. Beyond the walls, the orchards continue. But now there are gardens as well, small plots of vegetables and herbs, and here and there a cottage with smoke rising from its chimney and a door painted a cheerful blue or green. The village of Vineswreath announces itself not with a sign or a gate, but with the gradual accumulation of details, the way a painting resolves itself the closer you stand to the canvas. The road becomes a lane, and the lane is shaded by an arch of intertwined vines that give the village its name. Wisteria mostly, dripping with purple blossoms that sway gently in the breeze, and climbing roses, and here and there clematis with flowers the color of the evening sky. The vines have been trained over a series of wooden trellises that span the lane, creating a tunnel of green and purple and pink that filters the sunlight into 1,000 shifting shades. The air beneath the arch is cool and fragrant, and you walk slowly, wanting to prolong the moment. Children's voices drift from somewhere nearby, laughing, and a dog barks once and then falls silent. A woman passes you on the lane, carrying a basket of bread, and she nods and smiles as if you have always been expected. The lane opens into a small square, and the square is where the village gathers itself, the heart of the place, and you stop walking and simply look. The square is paved with the same worn stone as the bridge, and in its center stands an old well with a roof of mossy tiles and a bucket that hangs from a chain, still wet from its last drawing. Around the square, the buildings are built of honey-colored stone, their roofs steep and their windows small and many-paned, and every windowsill is crowded with flower boxes spilling over with geraniums and lavender and trailing ivy. The doors are painted in bright colors, yellow and crimson and the same cheerful blue you noticed on the cottages. And above the doors hang signs painted with images: a loaf of bread, a bunch of grapes, a horseshoe, a book. The inn is the largest building on the square, its sign depicting a lantern surrounded by a wreath of vines, and through its open windows you can hear the murmur of voices and the clink of glasses and the occasional burst of laughter. The smell of baking bread drifts from somewhere nearby, and beneath it the faint, sweet scent of fermenting fruit, the signature of a village that lives its life among the orchards. Pigeons coo from the rooftops, and a cat sleeps on a sunny windowsill, and the whole scene is so perfectly, gently welcoming that you feel as though you have stepped into a place that has been waiting for you. You explore the village slowly, wandering down lanes that branch off from the square, each one leading to another cluster of cottages, another garden, another view of the orchard stretching away into the hills. The villagers you pass smile and nod, and some of them say good evening in voices that are soft and unhurried, and you begin to understand that this is a place where people have time for one another, where the pace of life is measured not by clocks, but by the rising and setting of the sun, and the ripening of fruit, and the slow turning of the seasons. The light is beginning to change now, the gold of afternoon deepening into the amber of early evening, and the shadows are growing longer, stretching across the lanes and the square like the fingers of something reaching toward the night. The lanterns that the orchard keeper mentioned are beginning to appear, hanging from iron brackets on the walls of the buildings, their glass panes still dark but waiting. And you know without being told that they will be lit soon, that the village will glow with a soft, warm light that will guide you through the evening. As the sun sinks lower, you find yourself drawn back to the square, where a small market is being set up. It is not the kind of market that is loud and crowded and full of people shouting prices, but the kind that is quiet and intimate, a gathering of neighbors rather than a spectacle for strangers. Stalls have been set up along the edges of the square, their wooden frames draped with cloth in the same colors as the soft flowers, and they are laden with the produce of the village and the surrounding farms. There are baskets of apples, though the apples are still small and green, and jars of preserves from the previous year's harvest, and loaves of bread still warm from the oven, and bottles of cider the color of pale gold. You walk among the stalls with no particular purpose, letting the evening unfold around you. A woman sells lavender sachets that fill the air with their clean, calming scent, and she offers you one with a smile, pressing it into your hand as if it were a gift rather than a purchase. A man sells honey from a hive that he keeps in his garden, and he lets you taste a spoonful, the sweetness floral and complex, carrying the memory of every flower that the bees have visited in the orchards. The light continues to fade, and someone begins to light the lanterns. One by one they flicker to life, their flames steady and golden, and the square is transformed. The shadows retreat, and the warmth of the light seems to wrap around you like a blanket, and the voices of the villagers become softer, more intimate, as if the lanterns have created a space that is separate from the rest of the world, a pocket of peace that exists outside of time. You find a bench near the well and sit down, watching the market continue around you. Someone has brought out a fiddle, and a soft, lilting melody begins to drift across the square, not a performance, but simply a sharing of music, a gift offered to anyone who cares to listen. The notes rise and fall like the wind through the orchards, and the people pause in their conversations to listen, and for a moment the entire village seems to be holding its breath, suspended in the golden amber light of the lanterns and the fading brilliance of the sky. The market winds down slowly, the way everything in Vineswreath seems to wind down, without urgency or finality. The stalls are packed away, and the villagers drift homeward, their voices fading into the evening, and soon you are alone in the square except for the fiddler, who is still playing, his music now softer than ever, barely more than a whisper against the growing darkness. You sit on the bench and think about the day. You think about the river path and the willows, the way the light had been green and dappled, the way the water had murmured beside you like your companion. You think about the stone bridge, the way it had felt warm beneath your hand, the way the swallows had stitched the air above the water. You think about the heather and the oaks, the way the landscape had changed so gradually that you had barely noticed until you were already somewhere new. You think about the orchard keeper and her basket of cherries, the way she had spoken about the trees as if they were family, the way she had understood without being told that you were heading to Vineswreath, that you were looking for a place to rest. The village is quiet now. The only sounds the soft notes of the fiddle and the distant rustle of the orchards in the evening breeze. The lanterns are still burning, and they cast pools of light on the worn stone of the square, islands of warmth in the gathering darkness. The moon is risen, a thin crescent pale against the deep blue of the sky, and the first stars are beginning to appear, scattered like seeds across the vast dark field of the night. The air is cool now, cooler than it has been all day, and you can smell the faint sweetness of the wisteria that hangs over the lane, and beneath it the clean, green scent of the orchards. A nightingale begins to sing from somewhere in the trees, its song a cascade of notes that rises and falls with a beauty that seems almost too much for the quiet evening, and you close your eyes and let the sound wash over you. The fiddler finishes his song and lowers his instrument, and for a moment there is silence, the deep, complete silence of a village settling into sleep. Then he stands, nods to you across the empty square, and walks away, his footsteps fading into the darkness. You are alone, but you do not feel alone. You feel held somehow by the village, by the lanterns, by the memory of the day's journey, by the quiet certainty that you have arrived somewhere that will welcome you for as long as you wish to stay. The stars are brighter now, the night sky a vast glittering canopy that stretches from horizon to horizon, and the moon has climbed higher, casting a silver light over the rooftops and the orchards. The lanterns still burn beside you, their flames flickering gently, and the scent of lavender drifts from the sachet in your hand, a small reminder of the market, of the woman who had smiled and offered it to you as if it were nothing and everything at once. You sit for a while longer, letting the night settle around you, letting the peace of the village seep into your bones. The journey is complete, the day is done, and you are here, in a place of orchards and lanterns and kind strangers, in a place where the apples grow slowly and the bees are in a good mood, and the paths are lined with climbing roses. The nightingale sings again, its song softer now, a lullaby for the sleeping village. You are safe, you are welcome, you are home. And somewhere in the orchards, the apples are growing, slow and patient, waiting for the harvest that will come in its own time. And the bees are sleeping in their hives, and the stars are wheeling overhead in their ancient silent dance, and the world is quiet, and the world is kind, and the world is full of light. The lanterns flicker once, twice, and then they are steady again, their flames warm and golden, and you close your eyes and let the night hold you, and you breathe, and you rest, and you are at peace.